a lot of what we see, particularly on social media, it would be easy to think that people are largely bad, but I think it's definitely not the case, and this is a good reminder of that.
Hey Laurence.
Hey Josh.
I've been thinking about the podcast. How about in the first series we focus on the pandemic?
Yeah, and in each episode we can ask our guest how it's been affecting them and what they do.
We could ask people to join in with the hashtag #PosNegative.
How would we introduce it each week?
Or just say, welcome to Positive Negative.
Today I'm chatting with Lucy Radford from the Sumatran Orangutan Society. I first met Lucy back in 2009 when we worked together in Uganda on a project I helped set up called the Great Primate Handshake. This would be the first of many times we would work and travel together. Lucy has continued working closely with primates and conservation organisations. We discussed the impact the pandemic is having on her, the Sumatran Orangutan Society, its staff, and of course the primates that they help support. The interview with Lucy took place on April 8th. How are you today?
I'm all right, yeah. Woke up at 4:30 for some reason. I keep waking up super early at the moment, so a bit tired, but...
And are you waking up, you waking up worried, or are you just waking up early?
I think I normally do that anyway, but normally I can get back to sleep, and now I guess I wake up and instantly there's so many things to think about. So I think that's why I then can't get back to sleep like I would normally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if it's worry that's waking me up, but it's worry that's keeping me awake, I suppose.
Have you had any COVID dreams? I don't know if it's entered... I've definitely had woken up and had worries, but I don't know if it's entered my sleep.
I've had a lot of anxiety dreams, which I think are spurred by COVID, but not... it's not... The virus doesn't exist in my dream, but I think that's where it's coming from. So, I had a dream the other day that I was dog sitting and... or I thought I was dog sitting, but it turned out I was looking after loads of kids that I didn't know, and they were all really sick with a vomiting bug. So I think things like that, that are quite stressful, I think that's where that's coming from.
Yeah, it's coming in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually. I hadn't thought about it infecting dreams, I suppose. I don't know if that's the right term for a phrase to use, but yeah, I suppose it could do in different ways.
Yeah, I think that's almost my brain's way of dealing with it, because in the day I'm sort of keeping busy and trying to be positive, and then I guess it has to come out somewhere, doesn't it? So
yeah, definitely. And it's just a shame it's always when you're trying to sleep.
Yeah.
If we could start, before I move on to the sort of bulk of the questions, just by giving yourself an introduction, telling us who you are.
So my name's Lucy Radford. I work for a charity called Sumatran Orangutan Society. I feel quite lucky because my job has been able to continue. The only change for me has been that I'm now working from home all the time. And I find that the working from home I found quite easy to adjust to, so that's really good. My job title is engagement manager. So I started at the charity as fundraising and communications officer, which is a bit of an easier title to understand. So my job was sort of half raising money and half communicating our work to the public, to donors, to sort of trusts and foundations. And then actually just last month, before sort of the virus really took hold of everything, I found out that I would be promoted to engagement manager effective 1st of April. So it's been a funny time, sort of. It feels a bit odd to be celebrating a promotion at the moment, but yeah, I'm sort of starting this new role from home, and it doesn't feel that different to my previous role, but it means that I have to take more of an initiative and more of a lead on how we as a charity engage with the public. So that's anyone from donors to people just scrolling through our Instagram to even sort of people on the ground in Sumatra that our work might affect. So it's quite a broad scope. I'm having to take quite a lot of focus, particularly at the moment, on doing that digitally, because obviously I can't go out and talk to people anymore for now. So just looking at all the great ways that technology enables us to reach people, to engage people, and really sort of finding out the best ways to do that. And actually the virus presents a really interesting challenge in that sense, because obviously it's at the forefront of everyone's mind. So it's quite a good test for me to see how I can still reach people even through all this.
I suppose there's a lot of things there actually that I do want to talk about in more detail actually to do with the job, if that's okay. But is there anything else about yourself that you'd like to say?
Yeah, I guess so I've been doing this job since 2018, working for this charity since 2018. Prior to that, for about best part of 10 years, I was volunteering for conservation charities. So I'm sure anyone who's ever sort of read about environmental and conservation fields knows that it can be quite hard to find a paid job. And that was certainly the case for me, but I was really lucky. I lived in a shared house the whole time, so I could afford to do temp jobs for most of the year and then take a couple of months off at a time and sort of live very frugally and go and do that conservation volunteering. And that sort of gave me a lot of the skills and experience that gave me the confidence to apply for a paid role in the end. I was always quite fussy about what role I wanted to do, because I really believe that conservation should involve people, and particularly if we're talking about sort of Western or British conservation charities working in other countries, we have to be very careful to avoid being sort of the new colonialism. And I was very wary of applying for any jobs that would sort of cross those boundaries in my mind. And so, yeah, I applied for this charity specifically because the work they do is always in sort of full sort of discussion and collaboration with people living in Sumatra. So we fund a team of about 80 people who are Indonesian, and they do the work, and they inform everything that we do, and local people have a voice, and that was really important to me. So I guess, as an introduction, that's quite a big part of my career and how I've come to be where I am, I suppose.
That's fantastic. What kind of impact is it having on people over there and the work that your organisation does?
So around the same time that the UK went into lockdown, a similar thing happened over in Sumatra. So I don't know because obviously Indonesia is so huge and there's so many islands. I'm not sure. I think the rules might vary slightly between different islands, but I know that in Sumatra, and with the people, our sort of partner organisation, they're all now working from home for their safety. And that's sort of fine for the office staff because they can keep doing their jobs, but it means all the field work has had to stop for now. So field work in this context is mainly sort of forest restoration. So we support 7 different forest restoration sites, and that's most of them used to be plantations of some description. So either they were illegally planted and then the government sort of took them back, or they were legally planted but sold on for whatever reason, and we've sort of raised the money to buy that land so that it can be restored to forest. So the way those sites run is they have a sort of small teams, maybe 5 to 6 people, but they also have paid sort of local people who come and help at the sites. And obviously with social distancing, that's not possible to keep doing. So for now, the sites are not really being run in the normal way. And obviously trees will keep growing by themselves, and nature will keep doing its thing. But the reason that we do what's called assisted natural regeneration is because there's a lot of things. So like when a site has been previously, say for example, an oil palm plantation, the soil can be very poor quality, weeds and grasses come back very quickly, and it can be quite hard for those sort of very precious indigenous trees to make a comeback. So the reason that we normally have staff there all the time is to keep the weeds down, keep enriching the soil with compost, looking out for diseases spreading among the trees and stuff like that. So although, obviously things will keep growing, it's not ideal that all of that has had to stop for now.
Because I was wondering if it was going to be, if there was an element where it'd be quite good for the wildlife but I'm guessing without it being managed, it's not going to be so great.
It's a tricky one. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, because another thing that we fund is forest patrols. So we do satellite deforestation monitoring as well, and that informs where the patrols go. So if there's hotspots of fire or sort of tree loss from the satellite reports, they can go to those areas and sort of investigate it. And if it's being done illegally, which often it is, they can take sort of the appropriate action to discuss with the community sort of why they're doing it. Also, that can mean calling in law enforcement at times. And again, patrols can't be working at the moment. They're all sort of at home, effectively furloughed. And we just have no way of knowing whether people are taking this opportunity to go into the forest more and do things that they'd normally be stopped from doing, or whether people are actually scared to do that and that maybe they're not doing it. And we don't know that until this is all over. So in one sense, there might be fewer people in the forest. In another sense, there might be more. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one, but we have to put people's lives and health first. So of course we'll keep doing that.
And you've got there's no communication with the, I assume, villages there to know how they're being sort of even informed about the virus?
I'm not sure. So it hasn't filtered through to me. It's possible that there's sort of phone communication within country, but I guess it's not really, I suppose, within my remit to know about it. So they haven't passed it on to me. But I know that, so one potential positive, but again, we're not entirely sure, is Indonesia has closed, last count, I think 56 of its national parks. It might be more now. And they've closed those to obviously stop an influx of tourists that might bring the virus in to local areas. So that means that, particularly in the case of places like Gunung Leuser National Park, there's a lot of, there's one area where people commonly go to see orangutans, and often you'll have issues with people trying to feed them, trying to get too close for photos and that kind of thing. So obviously at the moment that isn't happening. On the other hand, these orangutans are quite used to people and probably are still coming quite near to villages. And like most human diseases, we assume that orangutans can also catch the COVID-19 virus. So again, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We don't know. They're probably being disturbed less, but it wouldn't take much for that virus to get in and wipe out a population. So at the moment, we're just trying to do everything we can to keep raising funds, keep raising awareness, and as soon as things can go back to normal, we can hit the ground running and try to ameliorate for any negative effects that have happened during the time when everyone's off work.
If or when will we get a human vaccine, do those vaccines ever try and get deployed to animals in the wild, or is that does that sort of thing happen?
I suppose in theory it could. I guess it would just be
quite difficult to roll out, eh?
Really difficult. I mean, I guess in some places where they're quite used to humans, in theory it would be possible, and that would give some immunity, even if they could just vaccinate some of them. But I suppose it's the ethical implications of, is it more stressful to them to be trying to dart them and anaesthetise them and then inject them and then re-release them? I don't know who would sign off on that. So I think it comes back to, that's why it's so important that people keep their distance from particularly other primates when you're a tourist, because we can pass things on to them so easily, and vice versa. There's some horrible things that we can catch from other primates. And that's why it's so frustrating to see people just getting right up close to an orangutan and trying to, touch it or take a selfie with it, that kind of thing. I wonder if this situation might raise a bit more awareness of that. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully. It'd be really interesting to see how everyone evaluates it when the dust settles. Because you've already heard of some people buying cheap flights, and it's made me kind of realise that we just shouldn't be flying or travelling as much as we do for the spread. So it just depends on what people's reaction is going to be afterwards, or how much of a reflection this is an environmental problem, not just a
Yeah,
viral problem.
it's really interesting, and for me, it's definitely made me realise that I love travelling, I love seeing new places, but at this time when I'm just in the house most of the time, that's not what I'm really missing. The things I miss is just seeing my family, or like really simple stuff like going out for a coffee. Really silly things that I never would have really thought about.
Yeah.
And actually, I think after this, I'm going to try and hold on to that and I don't know, maybe appreciate home more, appreciate the simple things more. And yeah, I'm not saying I'll never fly again or never travel again, but I guess I'm realising it's not the main component of my well-being, if that makes sense.
No. Well, even just visiting a park or going for a walk. Because even when I go out, I'm like, should I have walked this far? Should I have gone here? Like, because there are rules in place, but you don't quite know what the rules are. So actually, yeah, just being able to just walk around with a bit more freedom is going to be a luxury.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a not too distant future.
Yeah.
Well, so I suppose you talked about the impact on the work. What kind of impact has it had on you, do you think?
It's been a bit of a roller coaster, I'd say. Like, I think so. Just before it really seemed to get serious here, I'd been to visit my family for a weekend, and we were celebrating my mum's 60th birthday. And as the weekend went on, the news was getting more and more serious, and we were all sort of thinking more and more about, this probably will be the last time we see each other for a while. And, it's a funny one, because I used to go away for 8 or 10 weeks at a time, barely even contact my parents or my siblings, not really sort of, I'd miss them if I thought about it, but it wouldn't, I wouldn't sort of feel homesick or anything. And saying goodbye to them that day was just horrible. It was like, I felt like I was saying goodbye forever. It was really weird. And I think it's that enforced thing. Like, if I chose to go away for a couple of months and not see them, that would be one thing. But this open-endedness of, I can't really go and see my family, being imposed by someone else, is quite hard to deal with. Or it was in the first couple of weeks. I think I'm adjusting now. And, obviously, if it's a difference between seeing them and potentially spreading the virus to them, or not seeing them, then not seeing them is by far the better thing. But yeah, I think the emotional effects of that hit me quite hard at the beginning. And it's just sort of trying to moderate my news intake a bit, because again, in the first few days, I was just constantly refreshing news sites, constantly sort of scrolling Twitter and trying to almost arm myself with information. Like, I thought that was gonna, if I understood it better, I'd be able to protect myself and other people better. But it was just making me unable to do anything else, and I was getting really down. And so I've tried to get out of that cycle now, and I'm doing a lot better at that, and just trying to focus on little things and being grateful for things that I have. Really grateful for video calls. Like, I can still chat to my family and see my baby nephew smiling and stuff like that, which I'm aware that even sort of 20 years ago that wouldn't really have been possible, I guess. So yeah, it's a funny one. Lots of different emotions, I think.
Have you been inspired by anything that's come out of this?
I feel really heartened by the community response that I'm seeing. So I think even before the lockdown started, someone on our street had printed out little leaflets, and they put them through everyone's door saying, if you want to, please join this WhatsApp group and we'll try and support each other. And if anyone can't go shopping, then we'll, work out who can do it. And that's been really lovely. And we're sort of daily chats in there between people just checking in on each other. And there's like a local mutual aid group that I've joined as well, which is helping vulnerable people get their shopping and get their prescriptions. Even things like, so someone put a request in there as a woman who I think had wanted to get hold of some plant pots and soil and stuff to do some like planting with her kids, and she can't go out to get them because she's vulnerable. And even things like that, which people are really pulling together to try and help each other get through this. So I find that very inspiring. I think a lot of what we see, particularly on social media, it would be easy to think that people are largely bad, but I think it's definitely not the case, and this is a good reminder of that.
Absolutely. In what ways do you, I mean, we sort of touched upon this a bit earlier, but is there any ways in which you hope this will help shape the future?
I think, yeah, I hope that people will hold on to some messages from this. Like, I really hope that, you know, the sort of love that we feel for the NHS at the moment, or we seem to feel, will persist, and, you know, people are coming out to clap on the streets for them. But I hope that will be reflected in future voting and future policies, and I guess time will tell with that. Yeah, I hope the sort of sense of community will persist, and just the realisation that we can all slow down a bit, and that actually, you know, it's not the end of the world if we need to work from home. It's not the end of the world if people need to juggle childcare, and, you know, and that's not to say it's not the end of the world for them. I know it's extremely difficult, but as in, I'm hoping that managers of certain businesses will be more understanding of, you know, you can have a child and still be productive. You can be at home with that child and still be a valuable person. You know, it's just sort of maybe restoring a bit of humanity in some senses, and not seeing people as just the value of what they can produce.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all the other, not just the NHS, but all other sort of key workers who are so affected by this and are really sort of keeping everything running. And I hope that people will retain a bit more respect for them, and do things to, you know, support unions, sign petitions that sort of support people's rights. You know, all the things that maybe don't feel like a big action, but I just hope people will be a bit more mindful about that stuff.
That's really good. Yeah, it's really interesting seeing who society actually relies on day to day.
Definitely.
Come to the forefront. Has it affected, like, donations coming into the organisation? Like, does that change anything? Have people been less giving or more giving? Or
it's really interesting, actually. As you'd expect, we've had a few people who normally have a direct debit donation to us. They've contacted us to say they've had to cancel because their income's been affected, and we knew that would happen. But we've also had, just in the last week, 4 new people sign up for direct debits. And I don't know whether the people that still have money coming in, because I know I feel this way, actually feel so grateful for it that it's actually inspiring a bit of charity mindedness, I suppose, might be the way of saying it. So I guess people that perhaps have been on the fence about making a regular donation are now sort of thinking that it's time to do that, time to sort of make a commitment to something that they think is important. We also, so it's slightly unfortunate timing, we'd been planning for a few months to launch an appeal to buy a new vehicle for an orangutan rescue team that we support, and as it turned out, we ended up getting everything ready the week that sort of everyone started working from home, and it was getting really serious, and we sort of ummed and ahed about, do we still launch this appeal? Will it look a bit crass to be doing that? But in the end, they still need that vehicle. Orangutans will still need to be rescued. So we launched the appeal, and we're just really careful about how we communicated it, and the fact that, I actually wrote the email in sort of 2 sections, and the first section was just sort of checking in with people about how they are, and just said, don't read below this line if you don't have the sort of emotional capacity for it at the moment. And then the second part went on to explain the appeal and why we need the money. And the response to that was overwhelming. We had a lot of donations, and people seemed to feel really sort of warm towards it. And I think it's that sense as well of that's something they can help with and something they can control. Whereas with the virus, we all feel a bit helpless. So yeah, donations wise, I think, it all depends how long this goes on for, how it will affect us long term. But we're very lucky to have, I think, a cause that's so distinct from the virus, and orangutans are very close to a lot of people's hearts, and that doesn't change no matter what. So, and I think, just sort of treating donors like humans is so important, and we'll just keep doing that and hope for the best, really.
If there's anyone listening that would like to donate to that or to any other projects you've got on, how would they do it?
So our website's the best place. It's orangutans-sos.org, and that's got all the information about how to donate to the appeal, or how to set up direct debits, or just give a one-off donation. And we're also doing a big fundraising push this month called Ep4, as in great ape, Ep4.
That's very good.
So trying to get people to be more orangutan. So orangutans are quite unusual amongst the great apes because they're semi-solitary. So whereas chimps and gorillas live in quite large groups, orangutans mostly are on their own. And we're sort of trying to get people to think of social distancing as being a bit more like an orangutan, because it's kind of a nicer spin on it.
That's good.
And we sort of kept that messaging for this fundraising thing. And we're saying to people, look, you're at home now probably. Why not dye your hair bright orange, or grow a big beard if you can, or, just something silly and funny and distracting. And if your mates chuck you a few quid for it that then supports our work, that's great. So yeah, if anyone fancies doing that as well, then that's always welcome.
Cool. Are there any other sort of social handles for either yourself or the organisation that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so the organisation is at OrangutanSOS on Twitter and Instagram. And then on Facebook, it's just Sumatran Orangutan Society.
Awesome. Is there anything I haven't asked that you'd like to say or speak about?
I don't think so, no.
That's good. Cool. Thank you very much.
That's all right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Positive Negative.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at PosNegative, or find us on Facebook.
And join in the conversation using the hashtag PosNegative.
You can help us to grow by leaving us a review and sharing this episode with your friends and followers.
You'll also find links to what we've talked about in the show notes, or by visiting positivenegativepodcast.com.